In that role, I did not do as well as I should have. By asking better questions, conversations turn into ideas rather than just focusing on problems. I know, how arrogant of me. You hear so many statistics about how people don't feel like they have friends that they can talk to, or about how people feel lonely throughout their lives. Let me take you through some changes I have made to help me be in a better position to have better conversations with friends and family. Hello, and welcome back to Real People, Real Talk. Thank you for watching the last video, and if you haven't yet, please check it out. In this video, we're going to be exploring a topic that's really important. I want to start off by saying I'm not an expert, just somebody trying to inspire better conversations in the real world, sharing my thoughts, opinions, and things that I've learned. I feel that in this new world that we are living in, it's becoming harder and harder to have real meaningful conversations. I'm talking about that real talk where we can say what we think or feel without any prejudice and without the fear of feeling condemned by those we are talking to. It has really made me think lately, why is this happening? Why are we not comfortable to say the things that matter at the times they need to be said? What is really stopping us? And most importantly, can we change this to make us feel better going forward? Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of small talk. I would much rather talk to somebody about something that is really happening in their lives than the weather or yesterday's sports results. Of course, we might argue that this is dependent on the level of relationship, but my preference would be to be able to have those conversations whenever I can with whoever I can. I decided to explore the idea of improving the chance of meaningful conversations by trying to change how I communicate and also look for ways I can be better with those that I speak to, helping them feel more comfortable to open up and share the things that they actually care about. I started by thinking about the factors that may be hindering the opportunities to get into meaningful conversations, and why I may have opted not to do this in the past. I wanted to share my list in the hope that it will provoke some thought and hopefully help some of you who may have the desire to start having more of the conversations that matter. I think one of the first things I had to look at was how well I listened to the people I was speaking to. This wasn't just the actual listening, but also the attention that the other party felt I was giving them and the things I was saying whilst they were talking. In my opinion, this is probably one of the things we get wrong the most. We don't always give people the sense that we are attentively listening, which ends up making them feel that what they are saying may not be interesting or welcome in the conversation. I think this shows up presence in the interaction or conversation. The next thing I felt would drive the most impact was what I did with small talk. Rather than engaging in a conversation thinking, oh, here we are with the small talk again, I wanted to see if it was beneficial to divert the small talk and see if there is an opportunity to go deeper. This was also true for the responses I would give to small talk questions. Rather than just saying, yeah, I am fine, to the simple and trusted how are you, it was about giving a little more at the times that I wanted to. This would then induce a more meaningful response from the other party. This for me was important for the progress of the conversation. The next thing on my list is questioning. What questions are we asking during conversations? And are the questions that I'm choosing allowing the other individual to think a little further than the surface? How are you is a great example. There is better questions that can be asked to avoid the I am good thanks. The chances of your friend and family member deciding to say no, I am not fine at all, at the beginning of our meaningful conversation journey is pretty slim actually. Unless you have already established that talking relationships. Questions decide the purpose of the conversation. The last thing I come up with is around sharing. How much of ourselves are we actually giving out? It's a lot easier to do the closed-off responses that are perfectly acceptable, but being a little different than others and opening up a little bit with what I cared about would give me a better chance to get more from the other party. At the same time, you also build a little more trust by letting somebody into your care list. Sharing is how passion enters a conversation. As always, I don't believe that these 4 Ps make up an expansive list, just the one I came up with when looking at my interactions with people. I am sure everyone that's watching this video will be able to come up with more examples of what may stifle the deeper conversations in their life with a little self-reflection after an interaction. I do think that getting into a habit of thinking back at what you said, how you said it, and what the reaction or response was can help to ensure you improve whatever needs improving for the next time. Let's go through these conversation influences, look at some examples, and see how they can help us get away from generic small talk and allow us to have better conversations. Presence. In the past, I always felt the conversation had to be two-way all the time. Therefore, if someone said something, I would have to retort and say something back every time. Commonly, I see and hear the "oh me too" response. This looks a little like this. For instance, someone says, "I just can't wait to go on holiday in a few months." And the response being, yeah, that's great. I've just booked my holiday too. Or, "I've been feeling a little unwell lately." And the first response being, "I've also been suffering with something over the last week. It's going around at the moment, isn't it?" A lot of time, it feels right to let people know that you have also experienced what they're saying or are in a similar position. I think we do this to bring some comfort into the conversation by making it clear there is common ground. The other common response I've given in the past and also see quite commonly is the unsolicited advice response. Somebody tells you something and you feel compelled to tell them what you have done in that instance or what you would do if you were in that position. I used to do this a lot until I realized that I didn't actually manage to find out more about what people were saying because I was so busy trying to provide solutions. Whilst my intentions were good, I was stifling the meaningful conversation. You may ask, how do the responses relate to listening? Well, if we are just looking to respond as quickly as possible, we may not be listening to understand. In those instances, we are listening to respond. In terms of attention, I think we sometimes let ourselves down by the distractions that are all around us. If I'm holding my phone or just tapping it to wake the lock screen to see if there is any notifications while someone is talking about something that they care about, I might be sending the message that I'm not fully present. If we ever have to say the words, no, I am listening to you, go on, we are probably doing something wrong. Eye contact takes some work, but it's your best friend when showing that you're attentive. Progress. As I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of small talk, but that doesn't actually mean small talk is that bad. Small talk can actually lead to some of the best conversations and relationships because it served as an icebreaker for something to develop. I'm really talking about the instances where it's always small talk and doesn't actually go anywhere else. The point at which we know it's just going to be small talk, and if we are not in the mood, we would be quite happy to avoid that human interaction. Like me, you might be able to think about many interactions where it was just someone saying, "Hello, how are you?" And you retort with, "Fine, thank you. And you?" And the response is, "Yeah, fine, thanks." And then everybody moves on. Sometimes this feels like a wasted conversation for me because there is probably so much on that person's care list at the moment, and I don't even get to explore it because we've moved on so quickly to the next agenda topic of discussion. Purpose. I think this one is a huge contributor to whether or not we have meaningful conversations, mainly because it can go really well or it can go wrong and hinder the opportunity to go deeper. As a whole, I think we battle with questioning in conversations. After all, we don't want to seem like we're prying or making the interaction uncomfortable. In the past, I have missed the important questions, sometimes because I didn't feel like I should ask, and other times because I just did not think of it in the moment. I'm not sure if the person I was speaking to was expecting the right question or not, but I do know now that it was important to ask. The right questions will certainly deepen the conversation and put the person you're talking to in a space where they feel safe to say what they have been wanting to. The wrong question will make the person you're speaking to feel as though it's an interrogation and may well leave them feeling whether they should trust that their information is safe. Passion. The idea of sharing can be quite scary. Are you oversharing? Saying too much? It might be too revealing. What are they going to think of me? Look, we all know who we want to say more to and who we rather not give all the information to. I'm not talking about laying out your life story to everyone you meet, but are we stifling meaningful conversations because we remain closed off and give off this aura of not being interested to talk further? I have always felt that the people who give just a little more than the ordinary are not only more liked, but also cultivate better conversations. I think we should pay some attention to this. I have categorized some of the main factors I believe hinder us from having meaningful conversations. Let me take you through some changes I have made to help me be in a better position to have better conversations with friends and family. Let's talk about listening. I have to start off by saying, I always thought I was a great listener. I also thought I paid the right amount of attention and overall was a great person to talk to. I know, how arrogant of me. It was only a few years ago, while I was talking to one of my friends about some challenges they had, that I decided to make a change. I was being told about a number of factors that were impacting their business, and what I was hearing was, I'm not getting as many customers as I would like. Now, my desire to help kicked in, and I came up with and presented a number of what I perceived as great ideas, only to speak to them again a few weeks later, talking about the same thing again with none of the suggested changes being made. This exchange repeated over and over again for a few months, until I sat down, gave it all some thought. What is the point of me going through this process of idea generation and taking the time to suggest or recommend things that could work when they were not being explored at all? Then it hit me. The information that was given out so easily was not being heard because the person didn't need any suggestions or solutions. They probably just wanted to talk about their challenges. They wanted to vent to someone who would listen. Unfortunately, I had no idea what this lack of growth in the business actually meant to them. I didn't give the conversation a chance to go deep for me to find out, because I was stifling it with responses that were not ready to be received. For me, it felt like I was doing well in supporting the conversation, because they seemed like they were comfortable by bringing it up every interaction that we had. But for them, it was just nice to have someone to talk to who would not condemn them for not having all the customers in the world. In that role, I did not do as well as I should have. The first change I made: no longer give unsolicited advice. This includes any type of suggestion, recommendation, or idea, even if I am confident that it would solve the problem there and then, unless, of course, I am asked to. You have to do a little work to find out what people may want from a conversation with you, and sometimes it can be a straight up solution because they know you will have one. But even in those instances, I would rather let the conversation deepen, get all of the information, and at the end ask, would you like me to tell you what I would do? Let me go back to the holiday example from earlier. I can't wait to go on holiday in a few months. A response I hear very commonly is, yeah, that's lovely. Where are you going? And then the next response would be, ooh, nice. I went there last year. Or, ah, lovely. I've never been, but we're going to Dubai in October. Now, what I'm alluding to with this example is the standard "oh, me too" response. It feels comfortable and easy because we are continuing on the conversation path that they have started and bringing in something we can talk about. What I felt that I missed in the past is the fact that they said, I cannot wait to go on holiday. By using the "oh, me too" response, I may never get to the point where I could understand what made the person say what they said in the way that they did. I firmly believe that very rarely will there be no stimulus for somebody saying something. Instead, now, my response would be more in line with, oh, do you feel like you need a break? And then I'll see if that develops at all. In some cases, the person would have woken up to a very cold and bitter morning and just feel like they cannot wait to have some consistent sunshine. But in other situations, you may even provide them with a stage to open up with some of their care list. Suppress the urge to say you had the same experience, felt the same feeling, or went through the same situation until the time is right. And that time is most likely going to be when you have gone real deep with your seeking and you have allowed them to express all that they are feeling. The third thing around listening that I changed was simply about how I paid attention. I started listening to people as if I would be quizzed on the information they provided at a later stage. Think about it. If somebody said, listen to what will be said, and at the end there will be a 10-question test to check your understanding, we would make sure we were not distracted in any way so that we can ace that test. That has become my mentality when listening to people talk. You might think, well, I can't do that all the time because sometimes we're having a conversation and something is happening in the background that needs our attention. In these instances, I just let the person know that I need a moment to deal with that before I can get back to being attentive. Small talk is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. As I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of small talk. I don't really enjoy it as it sometimes feels like a wasted conversation. I have particularly been thinking about whether small talk is even necessary, but I believe my conclusion is that it is something that we do need sometimes. It is all relationship dependent, and with those that you may not have a relationship with, small talk makes interactions easier. There's a few things I consider around small talk. Firstly, I decided that there wasn't really a need for it with my closest relationships. Of course, if conversations went to the weather or sports events, then that's fine. But I utilized the time I had speaking to those individuals to talk about the things that really mattered. Secondly, I made an effort to deter small talk whenever I could. If someone starts going down the small talk route, I would try and redirect the conversation into something more meaningful. The way I did this heavily depended on the next two sections that I'm about to tell you about, which can both feel a little uncomfortable at first, but by sticking with them, you will unlock much better conversations. Questioning. We get so used to the standard questions that we ask, such as, how are you? Or how are you doing? Directly after a greeting. I doubt that any of us actually expect anything more than a fine thank you. They have just become obligatory questions in day-to-day interactions. Of course, if you see a neighbor on the street while touching up your garden, or walk past another parent during school pickup time, you may just do this. However, is there really a need within our more deeper relationships? After all, if the person you are speaking to decided to follow up with, are you though? After you said you're fine, you will think really hard about your next response. I don't think I could do that every time, so the best way for me to tackle my questioning was to change the ones I used most often and stay away from standard small talk inducing questions. Rather than starting a conversation with how are you, I now prefer something along the lines of what's been good this week, and also a follow up of what's been challenging this week. I also like what have you been working on and what's taken up most of your mind space. These are all questions that focus on somebody's care list, and I never really felt I was leaving a conversation without giving the person an opportunity to go into it if they wanted to. If there is something that I'm deeply thinking about at the moment, or something that I'm trying to fix or make better, I would really want to feel that the person I'm speaking to is interested and cares about what I'm saying. If not, I would not feel like sharing. In order to achieve this, it's also important to get the tone right. I have always heard that the best way to get people to talk is to ask more questions. This may be true, but can be counterproductive if it feels like an interrogation. Therefore, the questions we ask are as important as the way that we ask them. Thinking back, I used to ask questions about the things I was curious about, just like the holiday example. If someone said I can't wait to go on holiday, my natural curiosity would want to know where they are going, and I would have missed the way that they shared that information. Nowadays, I try really hard to look out for cues and would always address the I can't wait to first. Another useful questioning technique I adopted was to ensure that my questions did not derail the flow of where someone was going with the conversation. Using tell me more and how did that make you feel develops the conversation and allows someone to have the space to open up. I know what you're thinking. It feels a little bit like you're a therapist if you was to ask, how did that make you feel? What I have found is that after a while, you and those that you talk to get used to it, and the comfort levels increase significantly. In the meantime, there is always an option to substitute with something like, "How did that affect you?" which still gets the same result, but isn't so heavily associated with a therapy session. This brings me on to sharing. I think we can sometimes get to a stage where we want to make sure that we do not overshare, talk too much about ourselves, and not get the other person a chance to share too. We might get really conscious that we have just talked about what's going on for us for the whole conversation, and decide to suppress the natural urge to let our friends and family know what's going on. Sharing is a really interesting concept that affects meaningful conversations. I believe that the more we share, the more trust we build. But we also need to feel comfortable to share. How do we use sharing in cultivating more meaningful conversations? Well, I think that by giving a little, we allow for that conversation to deepen, resulting in the person that we're talking to feeling more comfortable to do the same. This is also a big small talk diverter. For example, if I'm asked whether it's been a busy time lately, I might just say, "Yes, it has been. But actually, we've really been thinking about how to deal with this new habit that our child has adopted, trying to get them to stop, which is taking up quite a lot of mind space." Now, when the time comes to ask how the other person's week, month has been, busy alone should not be the answer of choice. And I may just get the privilege of sitting in the mud with them whilst they talk about something on their care list. I've come to believe that a little bit of sharing can really help others to feel comfortable in sharing what's going on with them. I always thought that it was the right thing for me to show strength and deal with the things internally. But lately, I'm starting to believe that by doing that, I take away the opportunity for others to talk about how they may feel about that situation because they inadvertently believe that strength is the right answer. I believe that the real answer is to allow conversations to happen, and in most cases, this will start with us. I want to be comfortable to say, "When that thing happened, it made me feel like this," in order to inspire others that are going through it with me to say, "You know what? I felt exactly the same." I've highlighted some of the main factors that I believe hinder us from having meaningful conversations every day, and I also shared some of the changes that I have made over the years to be a better communicator. Here is a summary of some of those changes. Being an actively engaged listener, listening as though somebody will quiz me on the information I'm taking in. Really showcase that I'm attentive by maintaining a strong eye contact. Using supportive nodding to display listening rather than interject with words, and making sure to eliminate any "oh, me too" responses. I try not to feel the need to stop the flow of the conversation to give my thoughts or opinions unless the other person actually asks for my input. I want to create a stage for them to just be free to let it all out. I try really hard to make interactions meaningful by redirecting any small talk. Sometimes, small talk is the right talk. I just wanted to get better at identifying what was needed in various conversations. If it does feel like we are filling silences, I say to myself that I'm comfortable with the silence. I'd rather have a meaningful conversation than just say things for the sake of it or to fill a gap in the conversation. I had to be purposeful with the questions that I ask. Think about what I'm asking and why. Of course, my natural curiosity will always kick in to find out what I wanted to know most, but sometimes I had to put that aside and pay attention to cues. By changing the questions I asked, I got closer to how events impacted people rather than just learning about that event. By asking better questions, conversations turn into ideas rather than just focusing on problems. Yes, sharing may be scary, but I have now experienced the benefits of sharing a little of me to get a little more back from others. I am building trust, creating a safe environment. I have witnessed firsthand how conversations opened up by me talking a little more about the challenges I have had. After all, I'm giving someone else the honor of sitting in the mud with me, if needed. Most importantly, leading by example will inspire others to do the same, resulting in much better conversations. I would never want to feel like my friends or family were not able to open up when they wanted to. And lastly, it's good to remember that we're all just figuring it out as we go along. And so, if there is a conversation that I think hasn't gone as planned, I take a moment to reflect back on what I said and how I said it. really hoping to learn for the next time. And be open to let the person know that you may have fumbled it the first time round. You never know. By sharing that, you may even get a second chance. I am such an advocate for us all having better conversations, more meaningful ones, and those that inspire others to be more comfortable to share. You'll hear so many statistics about how people don't feel like they have friends that they can talk to, or about how people feel lonely throughout their life. And I think we can all do some work in being more present for our friends and families when they're needed the most. We can easily achieve this by changing some of the ways we communicate, and in return, enjoy the spoils of being that supportive person in somebody's life, allowing them to release the pressure they have been feeling. As always, I hope this video has provoked some thoughts for those of you who have watched and listened. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments about this topic and how you are all making sure to get better at having these conversations. Thank you for watching, and please like, comment and subscribe to help this video reach more people that could benefit from hearing this. My name is Bobby, and this is Real People, Real Talk. I hope to see you soon.